Hey, Joe Gilder here from Home Studio Corner. If you haven't heard yet, my new EP called Amen is out. You can listen to it on whatever streaming platform you so desire. But at the end of this video, I'll tell you a cool way that you get to experience the album for free. More on that in a second. To celebrate the release, I want to talk to you about mixing, specifically how I mixed this EP in just 2 days. Now, whether you've been mixing for a long time or you have yet to do your first mix, we all want to mix faster. Mixing faster means one of two things. We can mix more songs in a given amount of time, or we can make more money in a given amount of time. Both of those feel pretty attractive to me, so let's talk about it. One obvious way to get better at mixing is to simply do it a lot, which I have. So I've mixed hundreds of songs over the years, but there are 4 specific things that I did for this EP that allow me to get the mixes done really quickly. Let's jump into it. The first thing I did, and I've talked about this before, is I used a template. Now, I'm not just talking about using a template for mixing, I used a template during the recording session. So I created our initial tracking session file in Studio One on tracking day using my mixing template, so that all my sends and buses and all my effects were already in the session from day one. From the day Tim and Joel loaded in and tracked drums and bass, my session looked a little bit like a mix session already. I didn't wait till later to pull those in. I didn't want to bother with exporting the tracks into a new mixing session. I knew I was going to mix this project, so I recorded into a session that had all my mixing template stuff already baked in. Oh, stop that. Now, what does my template include? It's pretty simple, and I've talked about this before, but it has a couple of components. One, subgroups or buses. I've got a bus for the drums, for the bass, etc. There's probably 6 or 7 of those. Those each have a plugin on them that's not doing anything, but it has the EQ and compressor channel strips that I like to use on those specific instruments already there and waiting for me. There's also a plugin on my mix bus that has the mix bus compression settings that I like. It's also disabled. The second thing that I have, aside from the buses and those plugins, is I have a bunch of effects sends set up, or specifically effects returns. So there are 5 of them. I've got 3 different reverbs, a room reverb, a spring reverb, and a plate reverb, kind of small, medium, large reverb sizes, and they also have very different sounds. Then I've got 3 delays set up, a slapback delay, a quarter note delay, and a half note delay. 6 different effects are sitting there on the right-hand side of my session, just waiting for me to use a send to send something to them. Now, why is that important? Because I use those sends a lot during recording. Hey, that guitar sounds cool. It would sound great with this big plate reverb behind it. There it is. We're listening to it in the session right after we recorded it. So we're dialing in our tones for the overall record way early in the recording session, which leads me to my next point. The second thing I did that allowed me to mix the songs in just 2 days is I spent extra time on recording. Starting to sound like a broken record over here. The more time you spend on recording, the less time you have to spend on mixing, because you're getting it to sound the way you want it to sound in the recording session. So when you sit down to mix, it's just not that hard. Have you ever heard someone say, man, these tracks mix themselves? That's my goal with every recording session that I do, every song that I produce. Mixing becomes insanely easier the more you focus on recording and production. It just does. I used to do this annoying thing, maybe you've done it too. I would see somebody like Dave Pensato mixing a track, and he would pull up the raw tracks and it would sound phenomenal, and then he would do his thing mixing it. And of course I would say, well, of course the mix sounds good, the tracks sound good. Thinking, this is irrelevant to me, when is he gonna show me how to mix bad sounding tracks? See the problem? We can be so mix focused that we assume all of our problems will be solved in the mixing phase. And we'll hear amazing mixes and we'll realize that those came from amazing tracks. And we'll say, yeah, but show me how to fix bad tracks in mixing. And you can't. That is the wrong way to work. Get it to sound amazing in the recording session. Invest more of your time into recording than you normally do. And I promise you, your mixes will be better and you'll mix them faster. Third thing I did to help me mix these songs in just 2 days, I mixed along the way. I cheated. During all the recording sessions, once everything was done, I would throw some plugins on there. This is great for 2 reasons. One, it allows you to experiment. If you got a new compressor plugin and you want to know how it sounds on vocals, you don't have to save it and wait until the mixing session to try it out. As soon as you've tracked a vocal, even the scratch vocal, throw that plugin on there and spend 5 minutes just dialing in some sounds and then live with it. It allows you to try things and listen to them over the process of making this song or this EP without having to commit to them. You can always change compressors later, but if you happen upon something that you really like, maybe you saw me doing a video about a vocal EQ thing and you liked it and you tried it during the recording session, just on the tracks after you recorded them. If you like it, great, you've got your vocal tone. You don't have to worry about that when it comes time to mix. If you don't, it was still a learning experience for you. And bigger picture, it allows you to dial in the sound of the mix during the recording session. This is kind of like what I talked about before, but Warren Hewitt did an interview with Chris Lord-Alge, and they talked about how in the good old days, people would bake the sounds into the record, into the tracks themselves. So when the mix engineer got them, they already had a sound. They had some EQ compression, maybe some effects in the tracks. So all the mix engineer had to do was just balance stuff and do some minor adjustments and tweaks because the overall creative sound was there. And they were saying that today, too many people record stuff so clean that it comes kind of sterile to the mix engineer, and then they have to do a lot of work to create a vibe or to create a cool, interesting sound. Don't be afraid to spend more time on the recording. Mix it as you go. You may happen across some really interesting sounds. For example, I'll record an ambient electric guitar and it sounds really cool. I've got a reverb pedal that I like. But then I get it into Studio One and then I'll add more of that big plate reverb on top of it and it creates this really cool sound. If you've listened to my EP at all, you've heard there's a lot of reverb all over that thing. That wouldn't have happened if I waited until the final mixing session to start playing around with reverbs. I dialed in those sounds during the recording sessions and they stuck. The final thing I did to help me mix these 5 songs in just 2 days, and you're not gonna like this, I set deadlines. I actually completed this entire EP as a part of a new course that I launched back in January. It's not open now, but I'll reopen it later this year, called 10-Day EP, where I gave myself 10 days to make an EP from start to finish. And I allocated 2 days to mixing in that system. Might have given myself 3, but as we progressed, I invested more time in the recording to get that right, which gave me less time to mix, and it all worked out better. I would rather spend more time on recording, less time on mixing, than vice versa. Knowing that I had to finish all these songs in a day or 2 forced me to make decisions and to focus on the bigger picture sound of the songs and not get lost in the weeds of spending 2 hours tweaking an EQ on a shaker track. A couple things you should know about deadlines. They are annoying, they will stress you out, but they work. Now, in addition to the things I mentioned in this video, obviously if you get better at using the tools like EQ and compression and learning your way around your system, you're gonna become faster as well. But these are things that really worked well for me this time around. Okay, here's the thing. If you wanna hear my new EP, either the WAV or MP3 versions, and you wanna try your hand at mixing one of the songs from the EP, all for free, check out the link below, homestudiocorner.com/amen. It's a big old download that I'll send to you. Just enter your email address. I'll send you a big download that includes WAV files, MP3 files of my final masters, multi-tracks to one of the songs, the chord charts to the songs, and the lyric sheets to the songs. So a great way to dive in, immerse yourself in this music 100% for free. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.